Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Now, Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show.
It may well possess a rudimentary intelligence.
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
Felt a great disturbance in the force.
Hello, I'm Mr. Red.
Come on, bark like a dog for me.
Where's the goodies?
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
I bet you wouldn't have done anything like this if Mom and Dad were here.
You filthy criminal.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Here are your hosts, Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Shoots Away is so much fun your kids may never stop playing it. Look through this viewfinder, pilot the plane over a target, and drop an air rescue parachute. Shoots Away!
Cut.
Darn it. Shoots Away!
Okay, Dick, we got it.
Shoots Away!
Cut.
Shoots Away, the air rescue target game.
Welcome to Everything Old is New Again. Douglas Viviani here with the fierce competitor himself, David Cohen.
Yes, I actually was. Not anymore. I don't care anymore. But
this episode, you will become the fierce competitor again, because I know that you still pining after those 4 losses to superfan Loretta DeBono Selmeyer on the movie Music Mania game. Do you remember that?
Unfortunately, I do. It's my first loss ever.
All right, so we're going to have some fun today. Not so much competition, but more fun, thrills, and adventure with a returning guest, special guest, that we're going to simply say that he's our own gamester himself, the fellow Half Hollow Hills East High School class of 1980 classmate and graduate, Dan Neuburger. Welcome back to the show, Dan.
How are you, gentlemen?
Dan,
doing well.
Great to have you. Great to have you back.
Thank you. Good to see you guys again. Oh, by the way, David, there's a message from Loretta. She says you're going down again.
Now,
yeah. So
okay.
being trash talked between challenges. That's nice.
Okay, now, here we go. This week, we're going to set up what we're going to call the February Foolishness. Because we have a March Madness. Everybody knows the March Madness competition with the brackets and all that. College basketball, David Cohen's very big into that, correct?
Yes.
All right, so we're now in February. So we are doing our own February Foolishness coming up next week and the week after on board games. We're going to figure out what is the best board game of all time. So that's going to be something that to look forward to. This week, I'd like to get into a little bit about, let's just get there, because we're all, listening here, we're all kind of a little nostalgic, so-and-so, but we're also, do you remember even some of these games? And let's get us into that mindset. And last time Dan was here, Dan was talking freestyle, knew or a whole lot about toys. We were talking about toys. Remember that, Dan?
Yeah, I do. In fact, my kids are giving me a hard time. They refer to me as Milton Bradley now, and my 2 brothers are known as the Parker brothers.
Well, I guess the good news is that it sounds like they actually heard the show, so that would be the good news.
Yeah, of course.
Bad news is they actually heard the show. Now
that's 2 people. Great.
I think Dan said 3 though. You got your
3
kids and so.
Yeah, one of my kids is married, so we've almost increased the listenership by 50%.
It just goes on and on and on. See, we're just growing exponentially. Just
we're
as long as we stay on the air long enough.
If anyone hears this show, we're just ecstatic.
Now, let's take a look. Do you remember? I'm going to play a couple clips here. Now, I don't have not that many, but just a couple to get us going. These are not board games, but these are games. Then we'll inch into the board games. But do you remember this one, Kerplunk?
What would you call a game where you have to pull out a stick but not let any marbles fall? The more that fall, the more points against you. At first, it's easy not to kerplunk. Then it gets a little harder. And sometimes it's nearly impossible. What would you call it?
I mean, lots of game commercials, by the way, I was going through in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Not many now. Isn't that interesting? Do you remember Kerplunk, Dan?
I absolutely remember Kerplunk. That was the game. It had like a tube in the middle, and they were like pixie sticks that went through it, and you drop the marbles in the top of the middle canister part. That game always struck me as like 2 guys were sitting around a factory someplace and looking around, going, "What do we have laying around that we could make into a game?" It's like, we got a couple of marbles and sticks. What do we do with that? That was basically the genesis of the game Kerplunk. I did have
I enjoyed it. David Cohen, did you ever play Kaplunk? Looks like you're.
I had to go to rehab for 3 years to get over my obsession with Kerplunk. I was constantly I was really like, it was bad.
Serious?
Yeah, I just couldn't get enough of it.
Now, who was
such, to me? It was like, as a kid, it was like the perfect game because it was so simple. Like you said, a couple of guys probably figured, well, what do we do with the marbles and the sticks? Well, they made it work for me. It was great. It was almost like Jenga, right? You know, Jenga with the bricks and all that. It's kind of a take on that, right? You don't want to be the last person to pull the stick out that's where all the marbles or the last marble is going to drop to the bottom.
Now, who was your enabler? I mean, you said you're addicted. Who was playing?
My enabler. I guess my parents bought it for me. So,
but who were you playing with, or did you just practice by yourself?
Oh no, I would play by myself. Are you kidding? That's where it got really, really serious. The addiction. Yeah,
you can go blind doing that. Listen, we're going to listen to a little bit of Skittle Ball here. Let's see.
It's all up to this battler, Timmy Cole, right now. Here's Cole up at the skittle board, lining up, and no, a tough break. Now Timmy has that pesky 3-5-7 combination to pick up the spare. Will he play it safe? No, he's going for all three. We'll be back after a closer look at Skittle Bowl. Skittle Bowl is made by Aurora. It's a game of skill that any number can play. Children tend to be remarkably good at it when they can get it away from their parents.
Well, that was one that I was dying for. Year after year, I was on Santa's lap asking for Skittle Bowl, and finally got it when I was just about out of the age that I wanted to play it. But do you remember this one? It was a ball on a stick, and you throw this, the ball out and back to the bowling pins and all that.
Wasn't the Skittle games? That was Don Adams became the spokesperson for a series of Skittles games. There was Skittle Bowl. I actually have somewhere in my basement the Skittle Pool, the billiard game. But there was a whole series of them, I think, of Skittles
Sounds
games.
familiar now that you're saying it.
Yeah, back in the day, they also had it was in bars, if I remember, it was along or next to or around the other one, that game that you shoot the puck, sort of like a horseshoe type of game, or on the sand, if you remember, you'd shoot almost like shuffleboard. Anyway, that's
I think what we should be playing now, right? At the age we're at.
Either that or we should be at the bar right now. How about this one? I think we all remember this.
They're slugging it out in the middle of the ring. A right to the jaw. My block is knocked off. But you can press it back on again. Press this lever. He throws a right. The other, a left. Knock his block off, and you're the winner. This Christmas, it's Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
Gentlemen, Dan, I know you know that one.
Oh, yeah, yes. For sure. Absolutely. The two guys, the two fighters had names, although I don't remember off the top of my head what their names were, but they actually had, I don't know why somebody felt they had to name them, but there was the red guy and the blue guy, right? They both had a name.
And they were well made. Now, if you go, they're in like the dollar store or the 5 and below and whatever. And the quality of the game is down the tubes. It's plastic and it falls apart pretty easily and all that. That was another one that we were a big fan, and that could keep you busy for a while. You could well, we're talking before video games, of course. You could play that one for a while. Now kids look at that, they play it for like 10 minutes, and yeah, all right, we're done. Ben?
Yeah, it's not a video game, so why would they have any interest in it?
Exactly. That's why
that was a great game. I used to love that game.
Yeah. It was hard to find someone to play with, though, sometimes. It was really frustrating when you wanted to play, but that game, you actually needed another player.
And you got to hit him right. You got to hit him right in that chin, otherwise you weren't knocking that block off. So it was a lot of action.
Wouldn't the head like pop up if you hit it square in the face or something?
Yeah, so it would make that sound.
The idea. But I remember sometimes with those games, like either the red guy or the blue guy over time would like lose its head a lot easier than the other one. So I remember my brothers and I, we would fight over who gets the red guy because he always won, but still.
Red Rocker and Blue Bomber.
How about
there you go.
Such original names they came up with, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
How about the Hungry Hippo?
If you want to win the game, you gotta take good aim and get the most marbles with your hippo. Playing Hungry Hippo.
Hungry Hippos is the name of the game, and whose ever hippo gets the most marbles wins.
That one wasn't my favorite, but it was one back there. Out of all of those we just mentioned, which one was your favorite, Dave? I think you're saying Kaplunk for sure. Dan?
Yeah, I had real problems with that. Yeah.
Oh, there's not even a question. Rock'em Sock'em Robots was definitely my number one. Hungry Hippos was the stupidest game ever made. It's just a bunch. It's like four kids sitting across from each other, slapping, the game, and that was essentially it. No skill, just
it was frantic. Yeah, it was like a four-way whack-a-mole or something. It was crazy.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that one you kind of lose interest in, I guess, out of all of these, the quickest, right? So
yeah, see, I grew up with all boys in the house, so Rock'em Sock'em Robot was a way that we could actually pretend like we were hitting each other without our mother yelling at us that we were actually fighting with one another.
Well, we'll start off fighting and determine who's the best or what is the best board game of all time. We'll do that next week. When we come back, let's take a look at some of the oldest board games that are still being played to this day. You'll be surprised.
You're listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
I've got lots of ways to reconnect my family. Hasbro has a great selection of games. Most are available for under $20. Get your family together with Hasbro Game Night.
We're talking family games. We're also talking games in general here, and Everything Old is New Again, getting ready. This is like the pregame show to the February Foolishness next week. And the week after, we're going to invite back not only David Cohen, of course, but we've got the gamester himself, Dan Neuburger. We're talking board games in general, or just general, games themselves. How far back do you feel that games go? What civilization was the first to do board games? I have board games here that go way back when. Tell me what you think a board game or board games go back to. What civilization? Dan?
Oh, my gosh. It's got to go back to, I can imagine cavemen sitting around the cave, bored out of their minds, doing something. It wouldn't have been a board game, obviously, but it's got to go back really, really far into civilization would be my guess.
And you think there was a need, or you think there is a need for games, David Cohen?
I would think so. It probably went back to like Egyptians. I would say it goes really far back.
I agree, and it does. It does. It goes all the way back. Every civilization, no matter how benign or aggressive they were, all had games that were played, and not just by children. Of course, there were children's games, but there are also many adult games. So then let's pivot then, and I'll quiz you. I have 7. I don't think we recognize all of them here. We'll try to. 7 of the, I should say, really 8 of the oldest board games in the world. And some of them are still played to this day. 4 of the 8 are still played to this day. Let's think about it. Just for kicks, does anybody have any idea what would be their guess? And we'll start with David Cohen, of the oldest board game of all time.
I would say probably backgammon's got to be there, but I would also say, what was it? Parcheesi, I think, is probably up there too.
Okay, so you got to pick one. Which one would you pick?
I'll say, I don't know. I'll go with the bland, the backgammon.
The bland backgammon is the third.
Or checkers.
Now you're cheating because you're going all over the board here. You pick one.
All over the board. Very nice.
Pick one. Out of the 3
I'm going with checkers. Checkers.
Okay. Checkers is the second oldest game of all time. Created in 3000 BCE.
Good guess.
How about that? And it was created, and they actually have, believe it or not, they have world championships. They had world championships in France in 1885 in checkers, by the way. The craziest thing. It was invented by the ancient Mesopotamians in Iraq. Yeah, Iraqis today. So that's pretty cool. That was a very good guess, because that really almost hit it. Now, I don't think, Dan, you're going to get welcome. Number one, but Dan, give us another one you think.
I've got it narrowed down to 4. Okay, so the first one would be Mahjong, because that strikes me.
But is that a board game? I thought of that too, Dan.
Well, I don't know, because I've never played it, but it's played with tiles. So I would, I sort of think of that as a board game, but I'm not going to go with that one.
Good. As a hint.
Okay. My second one would have been backgammon also. But now I'm thinking that's probably not, I'm not going to go with backgammon. The other two are the game of Risk that I started with my cousin Stephen way, thousands of years ago that was still not done playing. But I'm actually going to go with Mancala, which
Mancala.
Yeah, interestingly, we just got a Mancala board.
What is Mancala?
So it's a game that's played on it almost looks like a piece of wood with like holes cut out, and you play it with like little chips, or they almost look like half marbles. It's actually I couldn't even tell you how to play the game, but we just got a Mancala set for one of our kids.
Now, Dan, I just saw that as well. It was in the Five and Below store, a pile of them. I bought one too. It's an Egyptian game. It goes way back. It's not for some reason they're not counting it as a board game, but it is one of the oldest games of all time, and it's an old Egyptian game. They found it, I believe, in the various tombs of the pharaohs.
All right. Well, then I'm going to have to go with backgammon then.
All right, backgammon is the third. So you're right there. The third oldest game of all time.
Chess, can it?
Well, we'll get there in a minute. You'll have your turn. Backgammon is another one, 3000 BCE, and it goes back to the Mesopotamians, from Iran. So you're not going to get the number one. So it's an Egyptian game. I'm going to throw it at you. You've seen it. It's 5,000 years old. They kind of know the rules, but they don't know all the rules yet. And if you ever look at like the paraphernalia from the Egyptians, the various and you look for games, you'll see this one. It's a box with a drawer in it and a bunch of figures or figurines. Have you ever seen this one? It's called Senet. Goes back to 3500 BCE in Egypt. Have you?
How do you spell
show
it? How do you spell
Senet? They kind of don't even know how to play it. So let's go down the list here. You what did you say that Dave wanted to go?
Tell us more about Senet. It's fascinating.
It is fascinating. Chess is the number 8.
8? I wouldn't have it.
600 AD. They don't know where it came from, whether it was India or China. And the rules have been modified over time, but the rules that we are familiar with have been in place since 15th century Europe. But chess is an old one. Anybody hear of Nine Man's Morris?
Never heard of that. I have never heard of that before.
I don't know what that one is.
I'm pretty sure you're making that up.
Yeah, you're making
for the record.
Look, see this one. You recognize this one with the black and white,
looks like
yellow tiles.
It's like backgammon out of control.
Is that the one where you? It's sort of like Connect Four, where you flip the tiles if you get your color tile on either end of a row.
Yes, exactly. It's almost like a video game is like that now too, but that's the one they call that Go. And that game was from China. So China, all these games mess up. Either Iraq or China have created all of the oldest games except for the one that we're talking about from Egypt. Anyway, so there's our oldest games.
Did Mahjong even make the list, or is that not considered a board game?
It's not considered a board game. I think it's more cards.
I need an official ruling on that. I don't agree with that.
How about the worst games?
I don't think there's a board involved in it. That's the thing.
Yeah, there's no board.
It's like poker. It's like a form of poker.
Have you ever played Mahjong?
I've seen it played, but no.
If you played, you'd be bored. Hence, it should be a board game.
How about we shake it up with the worst game ever? Here's one example.
Don't wake Daddy! The game where you've got to sneak into the kitchen for a snack without waking Daddy. Land on a noise, and you have to press Daddy's alarm clock. Will he wake up?
Back to bed. Don't wake Daddy. My Parker Brothers.
Let's Wake Daddy is the name of the game?
Don't Wake Daddy.
Oh, Don't Wake Daddy.
It's the most ridiculous game ever. How about one more and we'll dive into it? Crocodile Dentist.
Help me, my toothache! No worries, I'm the Crocodile Dentist. I'll fix that smile, you crocodile. I'm the Crocodile Dentist.
Crocodile Dentist.
Just grab and pull. There's quite a mouthful. I'm the Crocodile Dentist.
Crocodile Dentist.
The game's Crocodile Dentist. Take turns pulling teeth, but don't pull the wrong one or he'll snap and you're out.
What year was that commercial? Do you know?
Crocodile Dentist was... I don't have it handy.
Now it was Australian. That was the accent. Did you hear the guy say "no worries"?
Yes.
Which is like part of the vernacular. It's been part of the vernacular for many, many years now here. And there was a theory that it originated in Australia. And I bet that commercial was from like the 60s or 70s. And he said "no worries." So there you go. I think to me that's proof.
You think that's some archaeology we've done here? We've solved the
mystery. Inadvertently. Yeah.
How about the
Did
weirdest?
You say I just brought this show to a grinding halt? Is that what you're basically saying?
Yeah, Doug,
in a nice way.
Doug, I have to say, I actually think that the worst game ever made, and this may be controversial, and David may disagree with me on this, but I have to say, I think it's Mousetrap, and I'll tell you why.
Oh, wow.
That game, you could play it maybe one time.
I'm going to guess. Can I interrupt you? Let's see if we're on the same wavelength. Because you lose one piece, you can't play it again.
100%. 100%. And it's not like you could go into the store and ask for a replacement part for the cage that traps the mouse. I mean, it was the stupidest game because literally we got to play it one time and then someone would invariably lose a piece.
But here's the thing, though, Dan. The game itself is very cool. Like, if that didn't happen, I would love to play the game more. But you're exactly right. I've bought the game like 5 times. And over years, and by the time you play it once or twice, the parts are lost. You put it in the closet, and you got to literally buy another game if you want to play it again.
Yeah, or what we should do is create a new business of replacement parts for the game of Mousetrap. An internet catalog that you can order the different pieces from.
You can open up an eBay store for that and make some dough. If that becomes the best game of all time in our February foolishness coming up next week. When we get back, we're going to talk about some of the weirdest, I have some great ones, some weird games that were created. We'll be back right here, and Everything Old is New Again.
All right, so Doug, people have been saying, hey, I could find you guys on YouTube. You have your own YouTube channel. I can find you on Facebook. But what about other social media? Do you exist anywhere else in the social media universe?
Yes, we do. We're on Instagram and we're on Twitter. At the same thing, you go at EONA Show. That's Everything Old is New Again. The initials, right? So it's EONA Show. And that's it, at EONA Show. You got Instagram, Twitter, and I'll tell you, we post pictures, behind-the-scenes stuff, trivia questions, contests, notes about the show, so you have a lot of fun. Subscribe to us, friend us on Facebook if you can, and subscribe to the YouTube, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram.
That's fun. I'm going to even start doing that.
It might be worth your while. You can actually know what we're going to do next week.
Good.
At EONA Show. That's at EONA Show.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything Old is New Again, with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Here we come, the whack-a-moles popping out of our holes. Sorry, pal, you can't catch me. Oh, no, I'm history!
It's Whack-A-Mole, the 2-player game where you gotta whack the most moles.
That's smart!
If you choose red, now's the time to whack him on the head. But if you see the yellow light, he's gonna whack him at the speed of light.
Welcome back to Everything Old is New Again. Douglas Viviani with David Cohen and our special guest, Dan Neuburger. Dan, I'm going to pivot again here and talk a little bit about the weirdest, strangest, oddest games of all time, and I'll get your response. Although, let's just go roll the dice. Do you have any off the top of your head that you think of that you just saw the oddest game you've ever played?
One of the weirdest games I have ever seen, can't say I enjoyed playing it, was a game called, I think it was called Throw Burrito or something like that. It was, it's a card game that you throw things at these characters, like these stand-up characters that look like filled tacos. Well, I guess burritos. It's the stupidest game I think I've ever seen. And I have to say that was kind of a bizarre one as well. It didn't last long. I think after about 5 minutes we all gave up. But that would rank up there as one of the weirdest games I've ever seen.
How about one called Public Assistance? Why bother working for a living? This is legit. The game teaches you that you don't need to work for a living. Instead, just get public assistance and live off your welfare checks. The craziest thing I've ever seen. It's a legit game. I think it must be. Game. That's like an opposite of Monopoly.
Public assistance?
Public assistance. There's the game. 1980.
That is bizarre. That's
Do
offensive.
they still sell that? No, right?
I don't think so. I couldn't tell you, but yeah, it is. There's a lot to say about that one. Nothing good we can say about it. Let's put it that way. How about this one?
You could find it on eBay, by the way, for as low as $100.
Get out of here! Really?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I mean, there's one guy selling it for $500, which
I
is
guess because
funny.
it's so the rarity of it. I can only assume.
That is really bizarre. It's offensive.
Wow. All right. How about this one? 1966. What shall I be? The exciting game of career girls. That's not what you think. Like many of the games for girls of decades past, this game was and presented the limited career options for girls. If you want to be a doctor, you'd have to be a boy. The careers you'll find in this game include model and ballet dancer. How offensive is that? I mean, have we come a long way? Look at that. Is that unbelievable? I'm telling you, legit games. It's the craziest thing ever.
And here's another funny fact about that game. The pieces were actually cookies.
Oh, boy.
So it's like, you should be baking in the kitchen. Exactly.
Yeah.
You should be baking in the kitchen. It's crazy.
Just it's like a slap in the face when you look back and you see, holy smokes, what was going on back in the day, right? 1960s, this one. Edward R. Murrow was like a huge newsman on television back in the day. Tired of watching the news? You could play this exciting game where you answer current event questions from the 60s. Be prepared to fall asleep. It's called the NBC TV News Game. So
Wow.
I guess it was a precursor maybe to Trivial Pursuit in some ways. A real bad trivia game. Are these ringing any bell? Anybody ever run across this one? How about this one? You're going to freak out. Big Funeral, 1964.
Big
funerals? Yeah. Like funerals? This game is for you. You could plan elaborate funerals and throw parties and try to get more hearses and tombstones than any other players.
Well, look, I give him credit. That's kind of original. That's very dark and bizarre. I like it.
It is. All right. How about Post Office? There's a legit board game, Post Office. The game really has nothing to do with the post office, so don't let the name fool you. Instead, you have to do strange things like whistle a song or eat a chip. I don't know what that is, but you know what it reminds me of? When we play, we had Beat the Clock. Did you ever play that one, Dan?
Oh, that was great. And that was actually a great TV show, too.
They had a board game, Beat the Clock, and you could, hold the balloons up and different things, and that was actually pretty cool. So I'm wondering if some of these are takeoffs of better games. 1981, they were really searching for something to do. They had a game called Capital Punishment. This game is just a political guise. Have fun getting your criminals into prison and on to death row. If they deserve it, of course. Oh, and don't forget to use the what? To use the liberals to get your murderers set free. I mean,
whoa,
what
the
heck?
liberals.
Yeah, what year is that? What
this
year
is
was
1981.
Wow.
I mean,
Capital Punishment.
I can only imagine
God.
what the sales were. Yes, unbelievable.
Mommy, thank you for the gift, but I don't understand. Be quiet, Johnny. I'm going to give you some capital punishment.
What the hell? All right, what is this one?
Public assistance, the funeral game, capital punishment. This is great.
I mean, you never heard of these.
So
How about
bizarre.
now turning to the more like weird instead of offensive and terrible? How about a game called Bigfoot, where you just basically try to you go around the board, and eventually, if you run into or discover the Bigfoot monster, you win.
Okay.
Never even heard of that one.
No.
Unbelievable. All right, let me just see if there's anything else. And Monopoly has gone, like you were saying, Dan, through the roof. Oh, here's one, Mall Madness. Let me just give you this one. Malls may be dying all over America, but this is the time when a mall was the coolest place in the world to hang out. That's why the game was created, for teens who love to shop until they drop. Players must race to get 6 items on their shopping cart list and make it back to their car before other opponents. But they need to get cash from ATMs to purchase the items first. This is the kind of game that ends up in the Museum of Life in the 1980s. I mean, so it's just instilling in everyone how to go to the mall, go to get your money out of the ATM.
I think there were some actual game shows that were based on that. grocery shopping, things like that.
They do have that. Dan, you saying something?
Yeah, it's interesting how a lot of these games from the 1980s were reflections of what was going on in society, and it's just really bizarre. You're teaching kids, okay, go to the mall, get money out of the ATM, and spend it as quickly as you can, and get back to your car, and then you win. Awesome.
Exactly, unbelievable. In 2009, we got a little more creative, right? Mr. Bacon's Big Adventure board game. Mr. Bacon, a piece of bacon, right, makes its way through Meatland, where you have to sail across the sausage sea, past the wiener wasteland to get safely to the frying pan without ever going, wait, why are we playing this game again? For more on the weird. Anyway, so that's editorials. But so you're a piece of bacon.
What website did you find that game on? I don't know. You might have been veering into some unsavory territory there.
I never heard of that game, but I will tell you I like it already because anything is better with bacon.
That's right. You got to make your way in. You're a piece of bacon making your way into the frying pan. It's basically the game. I mean, it's unbelievable. How about, hang on, there's a couple new ones, a couple others. There's a learning manners game. Learning about manners picnic basket game, 2007. Ridiculous. Anyway, so do
why is that ridiculous? I think that's actually that sounds interesting. Learning manners.
I should say this: it's ridiculous. Like I don't know that any. Well, maybe kids would play it. You learn about manners by getting ants to stop stealing food from a picnic by saying please and thank you.
Okay,
that's basically it.
Got to start somewhere, right?
All right, but we talk to the ants. Okay,
well, I don't know. I don't think it's about the ants necessarily. It's about learning.
But you have to ask please and thank you to get the ants to stop taking your food.
Right.
Okay. How about the sinking of the Titanic game, 1975?
Cool.
The goal is to escape the sinking ship and get enough food and water from nearby islands until your rescue boats save you. The last player standing wins.
Yeah, everybody sounds good.
Sort of get a confused history lesson there because they're more into the island.
A nice juxtaposition with the manners game. Every man for himself. Women, children, get behind me.
Please get out of my way. Yes.
Here's one, David. You're going to like this one. Pearly White's a dental health game. Let's take a look at that. The board itself is a big mouth that's open.
A giant opened mouth. You can see the tonsils in the back. Nice.
And it doesn't even tell you how you play it. There's a spin board here, and you one day you brush your teeth, another day you go to the dentist. It's just crazy. And finally, Hangman. This is the most superfluous game ever. Can we just not play? We could play Hangman right now with a pen and a piece of paper, right? Milton Bradley actually made a whole game out of it so that you would buy like 2 folders that holds the paper and your Hangman picture. Anyway, weirdest, craziest, oddest games of all time. We'll be back right after this, talk about Monopoly in detail and all the various incarnations there are. Right before we get into the February foolishness, right here on Everything Old is New Again.
Bed bugs, bed bugs. Delfino sleep today. Bed bugs, bed bugs. Delfino sleep today. Bed bugs, bed bugs. Such a crazy game to play.
Bed bugs is a frantic new catch and capture game.
These days, the news is full of teen suicide, drug and alcohol abuse. It's depressing and concerning, but there is hope. Former WWE Intercontinental Champion Mark Merrow.
Champion Choice is a live presentation that empowers students to make positive choices and live their best lives. Teach students how to live a drug-free life, prevent bullying, avoid peer pressure, and keep negative people out of their life. We are defined by our choices. There is hope.
To schedule a Champion of Choices presentation for your school or organization, visit thinkpos.org. Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything Old is New Again, with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Accessible only across the forbidding lime green waters of the Bermuda Triangle and its sinister, unforgiving mystery cloud. Even the ports along the way are not safe. Can you beat the unknown? Can you save at least some of your fleet? Can you make it home with your cargo? This is the Bermuda Triangle from MB Games.
About that, MB is Milton Bradley. We're here with Dan Neuburger, David Cohen, talking games, board games, and trying to see which are some of the best, some of the worst of all time. Dan, you were telling us off air about a little trip you took and talking about Monopoly and trying to find the actual Monopoly game itself, the original presentation, not like we now see all of these various incarnations, and I have a list we'll go through in a couple of minutes. of the various types that there are. But what was your experience with that?
Well, my wife and I just recently traveled to Yellowstone, and I was in the gift shop and I noticed that they sell a Yellowstone National Park themed Monopoly game. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I was thinking, well, Monopoly must have hit the ceiling in terms of their unit sales of the game that we all grew up on. And I started noticing on the trip, every place I went into, every different national park had their own version of the Monopoly game. And it even got to the point I was in a store not that long ago, and I found a Schitt's Creek edition of Monopoly. So I guess TV shows have versions, and geographic locations have their own versions. It was fascinating to me because, like, how many versions of Monopoly does a household need?
Yes, but I also think in some ways genius because I've been playing Catopoly with my son of late, and they've just changed everything over to cats. And but if you like, well, I'll go through the list, but if you like certain TV shows or comic books or, like I said, natural monuments or, whatever it might be, there is a version of Monopoly that will satisfy your need. It's unbelievable. I've seen the Beatles one. Have you seen that, David? You're muted, but there you go.
No, I have not.
Oh, they've give got a Beatles version. They've got a Christmas Story version. They've got, I'm going to go through the list here a little bit, but it's Alice in Wonderland. I mean, give me a name of something. I'll tell you if they even have it. It's unbelievable what they've got here. Think of what you would just for kicks. They've got an Avengers version. They've got
Everything old is new again version. That's what we need.
We need that. Back to the Future they've got. Give me an idea, David. Any craziest thought you have? I bet you I'll look it up and see if they have it. Dan,
it's probably anything you could think of. How about World War II Monopoly? They have that.
All right, I'm going. They have Star Wars for sure, and they've got like 18 different versions of Star Wars.
Yeah, that's not what I asked.
I'm getting to it. Let's take a look. Hang on.
I think I'll write to them with that idea.
It's not bad because there's a WWE edition. There's a World War II edition. It's right here. World War II.
Yeah, cool.
Yes, there's a World War II edition. Unbelievable. Like Dan, give me an idea. A TV show, anything? You mentioned one, but
all in the Family.
That would. I don't know if it's popular enough. That's a great one.
It might be too old, before they started making all these versions of Monopoly.
Yeah. All right, so let's try Seinfeld.
There's an Allstate Main Street edition, by the way, if you're interested in insurance. That's as close as we get All in the Family. What did you want to look? Seinfeld? I mean, come on. Elemental P, Seinfeld. Hold on. We'll get to that. Let me see. Is there a Seinfeld?
Oh, there's got to be a Seinfeld.
Let me take a look. Let me see. San Francisco, Sacramento, and there's some just named after towns. Scooby-Doo, Seattle Mariners. And yes, there's a Seinfeld. Oh,
that's crazy. So it's like micro marketing. At some point, you're going to be able to call up and say, "This is David Cohen. I want the streets named after the town that I live in, the characters named after my family members." And you'll. My guess is that it's probably not that far off in the future.
Well, you ever see those maps? I mean, you go to the local. I don't know if they have it in New York City because it's too big, but it'll be like a Northport map, and it has the map of Main Street, Northport, and all the different stores around. Have you seen those? It's an advertising kind of ploy, I guess. And so I think what you're saying is exactly the same thing. That would be interesting. You could say, give me one for my hometown, your small hometown via whatever date. Have you played? So let's go beyond. Have you played Monopoly lately? Who's played Monopoly in the last 10 years? Anybody raise their hand?
Yeah, I have to admit, I have played it.
All right, so we all have. It looks like we've all raised our hand. Under what circumstances? Was it with your kids or was it something else? Usually just with the kids, right?
Yeah, in my case, yeah, it was with my kids. But I find the games now, they don't require any board to play. We just recently played a game called Salad Bowl. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
It's really simple. All you need is a bowl and strips of paper. That's literally all you need. And it was a really fun game. Everybody was laughing. and it didn't cost anything to purchase the game. Monopoly, look, who doesn't like the game of Monopoly? But Monopoly just takes too long to finish the game. Like, I don't know, have you guys ever finished the game? The game that you just recently played, did you actually finish that game?
Well, legit is on the table still to this day, and day by day we play like for maybe a half hour, and then we'll move on. And so, like, you're right, we haven't completed the game yet. And by the way, my son's beating the pants off me because he lands on that stinking free parking all the time. But it really is. It's an ongoing affair. That and Risk, as you mentioned previously.
Yeah.
In college, we did a Risk tournament where we had like the whole dorm in on it, or whatever, eight. I think you have 8 players or 6. I think it's 8, and then we had like associates. I guess you'd have like a vice president or whatever that would run out the door and make or an ambassador make deals with people and whatever. But it was a drinking game, so like we played it from 12 to 12, and it still was going on. But you did it because it was for social, and you were just kind of hanging out. To actually play the game for playing the game's sake, can you get through it in a short period of time? No, right?
And that's the downside to those games, in my opinion. Like Monopoly, the whole concept of sitting down with friends and family and trying to bankrupt them, it's a bizarre idea.
It's true. But what other games we've played one, like you mentioned, the salad game. We do one called Would You Rather. So I don't know where I got it, but you chop up these pieces of paper. You can make them all yourself too. Would you rather, eat dinner or eat lunch? That's not a good example, but whatever. You give it options. What do you like better? Summer or winter, whatever. And I'm not being good examples here, but you make these odd, difficult choices and you talk about it. And that's pretty much the game. But no one wins or loses. It's just explain your reason. David Cohn, have you ever played anything of that nature?
No.
What
but
game is your favorite game?
Monopoly, I think it's more about like giving up. I think, right? You're not going to play it. Someone's not going to keep going when they have like no properties and like $500. At some point, someone's going to surrender, and that's how my games usually end. The ones I play, but yes, it takes entirely too long just to start the game. Nowadays it's too much.
And they tell you
curiosity, is the game Public Assistance that you mentioned before like a spin-off of the game of Monopoly, where if you get to that point that David just mentioned and you run out of cash, you then move on to the Public Assistance game? Or
that you could have that in the living room and you play Monopoly in the dining room, right?
a progressive board game party.
I mean, yeah. The other thing with Monopoly is, though, with all of these, I have somebody at work that literally collects these new Monopoly games. So she's got like 20 versions. Now what you can't display them unless I don't even know how, it's too much. I mean, how could you display them? So what do you do? Like, you put them in a closet and then what? Like, I'm just trying to think of what's the upside of collecting all the various games.
Unless you like line an entire wall of your house, with them, you somehow like mount each game up so you could see the cover of it. That would be interesting, I guess.
I mean, like, you could do that in your man cave, so to speak, and if that makes sense. Some out of the way place, the basement away. You're not going to put that in your living room, right? Odd.
Depends, I guess.
I don't know. It's very weird. But I do love I do have great memories of it as a kid, playing with other kids. But yeah, you would never finish it. You could even be playing for 3 hours, and here's the thing: you're 4 kids playing, and then you got bankrupt. And this game's going on for the next 2 hours. What are you doing? It's the worst part about it. It's like you
guys ever play with someone actually flips the board, the whole classic flipping the Monopoly board over?
No,
that's how they usually end, actually.
That was, I think that's how every game of Risk ever ended in my family growing up.
Well, that is the problem with Risk, because those pieces are too movable, right? I mean, that's crazy. There's a great Seinfeld on that.
The original game was actually little wooden cubes, and it was a lot more difficult to knock them over than when we were younger and playing. They had those little, almost like X-shaped little plastic things that could go flying off the board much easier. But literally, I can't remember a time that the game didn't end with somebody saying "screw this" and just flipping the board, saying "I win, game's over."
Yeah.
Well, I guess a win's a win. What can I tell you? We're winning here with Dan Neuburger, David Cohen, and we are going to come back.
Really? Oh, God.
Wow. Next week. You do a segue thing. How would you segue?
Better not to do the segue.
We'll be back next week to continue more thrills, fun, and adventure.
Oh, the show's over. Okay.
Yes. What is the best board game of all time? Come on back. Everything old is new again next week. We'll continue. Thanks, Dan. We'll be right back next week.
Thanks, Dan.
You've been listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's pop culture entertainment talk show. Find us on the web at everythingoldisnewagain.biz. That's .biz.
See you next week. Same bat time, same bat station.